Hi friends, welcome to Beautifully Bookish Bethany. Today I'm going to be reviewing Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell. It is snowing in New York City today. I wanted to be cozy, so we're doing a cozier video with a slightly different setup and background angle. So I read Winter's Orbit recently and I freaking loved it so much. And while I know this book may not appeal to everybody, I really wanted to talk about why I loved it, what it's doing, and who it might appeal to. What's really interesting to me about this book is it's a great crossover between science fiction and romance. And I always try to highlight books like this when I find them because it can sometimes be hard to find good entry points into a genre for people who read a different genre. Winter's Orbit is cool because if you are a romance reader and you're interested in getting into science fiction, this would be a fantastic book to pick up. Similarly, if you are a science fiction reader interested in dipping your toes in romance, I would say Winter's Orbit would be a great book to pick up. The reason being that it is a pretty even blend of politically driven science fiction with really interesting plot elements and twists and turns and lots of world building, especially interesting cultural world building, which I really appreciated. But also, it contains a central romance plot, and if you took out the romance, you wouldn't have much of a book left. Similarly, if you took out all the sci-fi political stuff, you wouldn't have much of a book left. And I think it's really rare that you find somebody who can so seamlessly blend those two things, and I loved it. It was so many of my favorite tropes and my favorite things in one, and I loved the way that it all came together. So this is a book set in an intergalactic empire in space with an emperor at a central planet ruling over a federation of smaller planets, and there's all of these interlocking treaties, wider politics and political machinations and intrigue and things that are going on. There's a mystery element to the story that drives some of the action that's really interesting, but the central relationship here is a political arranged marriage. I am somebody who really enjoys a political marriage or marriage of convenience plot, so that element of this really worked for me. This is also kind of your classic opposites attract. The book has been pitched as Ancillary Justice meets Red, White, and Royal Blue. While I have not read Ancillary Justice, based on what I know, I think that's probably pretty good at giving you some idea of what you're getting into. There is a queer relationship here, and one of the things I do want to talk about in this review that I thought was very cool is I loved the way that the societies represented in here dealt with issues of gender and sexuality. I thought it was really interesting. You know, one of the things that I love about speculative fiction is it offers an opportunity to create a better world, right? Like, why not create a world where homophobia and transphobia are just not a thing? They're a non-issue. And maybe there are other types of oppressions or other dangerous things that go on, but like that doesn't have to be one of them. Or in other cases, why not create a world where racism is not an issue? And anyway, so I really appreciate that the author definitely did that here. In the primary culture that we're being exposed to, people represent their gender through the types of accessories they wear, either in their hair or as jewelry, which I think is fascinating that like you figure out somebody's gender not by looking at their body, but by looking at the accessories that they choose to put on. So the way this works is that women will wear accessories made of flint, men will wear accessories made out of wood, and non-binary folks will wear accessories made out of glass. And I just thought that was a really cool and interesting idea, and how useful would that be to be able to like see what somebody is wearing and know from that without having to like ask invasive questions. I think that's really cool. And it's just like normalized where you see people like trying to figure out the gender of somebody, but it's not based on their body, it's based on what they're wearing, because there are other cultures that do it differently. For instance, we're told about another planet where the way that they show gender is by different ways of tying a scarf. And I just thought that was really interesting. So like somebody might come from one culture to another and be like, oh, wait, oh, I think they're female because I think that's like the female way of tying the scarf. It makes you consider how much socialization plays into the ways that we think about gender and sexuality. Anyway, I loved that. I thought it was really interesting. I loved the relationship at the center of this. The two main characters are Kian and Jinan. Kian is part of the royal family, and the emperor tells him, hey, you are going to marry this person because we need this marriage in place for this big treaty that is getting renewed, and it has to get renewed, and so you have to marry this person. Kian has been known as kind of like a charismatic playboy, right? He's outgoing, he likes the press, he likes people, and he tends to be kind of self-deprecating in his humor, even though he has grown past some of his youthful misadventures. The person he's marrying is a man named Jinan, who is a recent widow. He had been married to Kian's cousin, who died in an accident. Jinan has to remarry because of diplomatic reasons. He is from a different culture, from a different planet. And so on some level, it's like an intercultural marriage as well. But Jinan is also very shy. He's very introverted. And as the story progresses, it becomes pretty obvious, although we don't learn details until farther in the story, so I won't go into any detail, but it becomes pretty obvious that like not all was right with his former marriage. So there are some content warnings here for domestic abuse. Most of it is not on page, and it is with a former relationship, but know that that is an element of it. There is definitely miscommunication going on between the two of them, but instead of it just being like silly miscommunication, I didn't mind it because it's rooted in cultural differences, in personality differences that like actually make sense, and in responses to trauma and like dealing with PTSD. It's got a very sweet, slow burn romance between the two of them while they're caught up in trying to uncover some things going on because Jinan, they discover, is being investigated for the murder of his spouse, his former husband. Okay, so I'm not going to say any more about the plot, but for me, this was absolute perfection. I loved everything about it. I loved the way everything came together. I loved the relationship, and it was just so good. Another thing that I appreciated about this, given that it's not an Own Voices author writing about a gay romance, is I think it's really respectful in the way that it does it, and it really focuses on the personalities and the relationship, and it's not overly sexualizing it. It's got a closed door approach to steamier scenes. The only thing that's actually on page is like kissing, and the rest of it is off page. So I think to me that felt appropriate if that's something that you're concerned about. I just loved this a whole lot. I would say this is my favorite book that I have read so far in 2020, and I would definitely expect to see it on my favorites of the year list when we eventually get to the end of the year. So really wanted to gush about this. I think it's phenomenal. I hope a lot of people will pick it up, and I'm so happy that Tor sent me a copy for review because wow, it was just so good. And that is something I should say. Tor did send me an early copy for review. They asked if I was interested. I said yes, send it along, and I'm so pleased they did because I absolutely loved it. It's coming out in early February, so I will try to time this video so it goes up within a week or so of the release date. But I loved it. The cover is beautiful, and I also have to say, I am stunned that this is a debut, you guys. Like, it's her first book. Seriously, it's so freaking good. We had so many great debuts in 2020, and like the fact that this is one of the first debuts of 2021 I'm reading, and it just blew me away. Like, what more could you ask for? Seriously. Anyway, that said, talk to me in the comments down below. Let me know any of your thoughts or feelings on anything that I talked about today. And for your question of the day, tell me about a book that you've loved that was just like your catnip in terms of tropes, where it hit all the things you love. For me, Winter's Orbit was perfect. It had a political arranged marriage. It has sci-fi that's got a lot of political intrigue. It's got a slow burn romance. Like, it was so good, and I loved it, and I loved the way it was executed. So talk to me in the comments down below and let me know about an example for you. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you want to see more, and if you want to support the work of the channel, check out the Patreon linked down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.